Taratas Chatisha Vigyaswara
Janma Dyasayatam Vayaritartas Chatirsa Vigyaswara
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya
Tenne Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Mujanti Jasuraya
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargumrisha
Tejo Varimridan Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargumrisha
Dhamna Srena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And the
truth
primeval cause of all causes.
and the primeval cause of all
Of
causes,
the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all
And
manifestations.
he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is she only who first imparted Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
As one
illusion.
is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of
representation
water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of the water is in the fire, land is in the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of material nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they
I
are
therefore
unreal.
meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is
Krishna,
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent to transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations in the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma Pujita Kaitravutra
Dharma Pujita Kaitavya
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam
Paramo Nirmatsaranam
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu
Veda Vasavavati
Sivadam Tapa Trayon Mulanam
Shivadam Tapa Toyomulanam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Shma Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim Va Purir Ishwaraha
Kimva Paririsvara
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra
Sadyurudya Varidya
Kriti
Titra
Bihi Sasu Sabistakshana.
Kritighi Shushuvistat
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which materially
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
Shma Bhagavatam Shpapanti the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are full and pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
They have to their reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the twofold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by great Sri Vyasadeva is maturity.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other
What
scripture?
is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this cult of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam
Nigama Kapotar Palam
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam
Sukamkadam Ritadravasam
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam
Vivata Bhagavatam Rasam
muhur aho raskabu vibhavakaha.
Mohura Hurasika.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Shma
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired truth, Vedic
It
literature,
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
it emanated from the lips of Shukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful,
Therefore, this food has become even more tasteful.
although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was always relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including the created soul.
Shinvatan Swakata Krishna
Shramvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantaksto Hi Abhadrani
Vidyantasto Hiabhadrani,
Vidunati Srihitsatam
Vidunoti Suritsatam,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
to hear about Krishna from the Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is it self-righteous activity.
it's self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
One who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotees constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nasta presha bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata seva
bhagavati uttama sloke
bhagavati uttama shloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhavatir bhaktir naistiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, devotees naturally devote dormant transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As you hear more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobha dayaschaye
kamalo bhadescha
chetayitaranabhidam
chitaitaranabhidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
sitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the mode of passion and ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manas
Bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Jnana
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Shidyante sarvasamsaya
Khyante Samshaya
Shiyante jasya karmani
Khyante Sachakarmani
Krista evat manishware.
Drusta Evatmanishwari.
Thus, bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the hard of material effect
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsham Shamagram,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understand the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from him or his devotees Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text number 5. Shirani kim patti na santi ti santi bhiksham
Chirani kim panti na shanti rishan
naiva gripa parabrita saritopi asusyan.
Nevan gripa parabrita sharito pyasusyam.
Rudaguya kim ajito vati napasanam
Ruda Goya Kimajito Vati no Pasana
kasmat bhajanti kavayo dana durmadandan.
Kasmat Bhajanti Kavayo Dana Durmadadhan.
Translation by Śrīla Prabhupada. Are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? Do the trees, which exist for maintaining others, no longer give alms and charity? Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or, above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why, then, do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Purport by Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. So these are what's called rhetorical questions, because you know what the answer is to each one of those. The renounced order of life is never meant for begging or living at the cost of others as a parasite. According to the dictionary, a parasite is a sycophant, someone who praises others in order to get benefits from them, who lives at the cost of society without making any contribution to that society. The renounced order is meant for contributing something substantial to society and not depending on the earnings of householders. Or on the contrary, acceptance of alms from the householders by the bona fide mendicant is an opportunity afforded by the saint for the tangible benefit of the donor. In the Sanātana Dharma institution, almsgiving to the mendicant is part of a householder's duty, and it is advised in the scriptures that the householders should treat the mendicants as their family children and should provide them with food, clothing, etc., without being asked. Pseudo-mendicants, or false mendicants, therefore, should not take advantage of the charitable disposition of the faithful householders. The first duty of a person in the renounced order of life is to contribute some literary work for the benefit of the human being in order to give him realized direction towards self-realization. Amongst the other duties in the renounced order of life of Śrīla Sanātana, Śrīla Rūpa, and the other Gosvāmīs of Vṛndāvana, the foremost duty discharged by them was to hold learned discourses amongst themselves at Sevākuñja, Vṛndāvana, the spot where Sri Radha Damodar temple was established by Sri Jiva Goswami, and where the actual Samadhi tombs of Śrīla Rūpa Goswami and Śrīla Jiva Goswami are laid. For the benefit of all in human society, they left behind them immense literatures of transcendental importance. Similarly, all the acharyas who voluntarily accepted the renounced order of life aimed at benefiting human society and not at living a comfortable or irresponsible life at the cost of others. However, those who cannot give any contribution should not go to the householders for food, for such mendicants asking bread from the householders are an insult to the highest order. Sukadeva Goswami gave the warning especially for those mendicants who adopt this line of profession to solve their economic problems. Such mendicants are in abundance in the age of Kali. When a man becomes a mendicant willfully or by circumstances, he must be of firm faith and conviction that the Supreme Lord is the maintainer of all living beings everywhere in the universe. Why then would he neglect the maintenance of a surrendered soul who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord? A common master looks to the necessities of his servants, so how much more would the all-powerful, all-opulent, Supreme Lord look for the necessities of life for a fully surrendered soul? The general rule is that a mendicant devotee will accept a simple small loincloth without asking anyone to give it in charity. He simply salvages it from the rejected torn cloth thrown in the street. When he is hungry, he may go to a magnanimous tree which drops fruits, and when he is thirsty, he may drink water from the flowing river. He does not require to live in a comfortable house, but should find a cave in the hills and not be afraid of jungle animals, keeping faith in God, who lives in everyone's heart. The Lord may dictate to tigers and other jungle animals not to disturb his devotee, Haridas Thakur, a great devotee of Lord Sri Chaitanya, used to live in such a cave, and by chance a great venomous snake was a co-partner of the cave. Some admirer of Thakura Haridasa, who had to visit Thakura every day, feared the snake and suggested that the Thakura leave that place. Because his devotees were afraid of the snake and they were regularly visiting the cave, Thakura Haridasa agreed to the proposal on their account. But as soon as this was settled, the snake actually crawled out of its hole in the cave and left the cave for good before everyone present. By the dictation of the Lord, who lived also within the heart of the snake gave preference to Haridasa and decided to leave the place and not disturb him. So this is a tangible example of how the Lord gives protection to a bona fide devotee like Thakura Haridasa. According to the regulations of the Sanatana Dharma institution, one is trained from the beginning to depend fully on the protection of the Lord in all circumstances. The path of renunciation is recommended for acceptance by one who is fully accomplished and fully purified in his existence. This stage is described also in the Bhagavad Gita 16.5 as Daivi Sampat. A human being is required to accumulate Daivi Sampat, or spiritual assets. Otherwise, the next alternative, Asuri Sampat, or material assets, will overcome him disproportionately, and thus one will be forced into the entanglement of different miseries of the material world. A sannyasi should always live alone, without company, and he must be fearless. He should never be afraid of living alone, although he is never alone. The Lord is residing in everyone's heart, and unless one is purified by the prescribed process, one will feel that he is alone. But a man in the renounced order of life must be purified by the process, and thus he will feel the presence of the Lord everywhere and will have nothing to fear, such as being without any company. Everyone can become a fearless and honest person if his very existence is purified by discharging the prescribed duty for each and every order of life. One can become fixed in one's prescribed duty by faithful oral reception of Vedic instructions and assimilation of the essence of Vedic knowledge by devotional service to the Lord. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. So this is a very nice explanation of self-sufficiency of a devotee. A devotee does not have to become a stooge or a dependent on some rich person and pander to their whims and be a sycophant, in other words, praising them always in order to get some benefits from them. The devotee is independent. The devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme, absolute truth, personality of Godhead. He has all opulences, beauty, fame, power, knowledge, and he's wealth and renunciation. Therefore, he knows that if he sincerely serves Krishna, he'll never be in want. The Lord will take care of him. The Lord promises this. Te samaham samudarta. Well, the Lord says that he will provide what the devotee lacks and preserve what he has. So he's not at all in anxiety about material needs or things. And because he lives very simply, his needs are minimal. So that's the life of a renounced devotee. And life starts out like that. When one is 5 years old, the parents take the young boy and girls also to the Brahmana or Guru's house or dwelling, and they're educated to be renounced and to serve the Guru like a father, and to live very simply, sleeping on the floor, just having a few things, not being surrounded by gadgets, and hearing regularly scriptures, following the rules and regulations. So the child is the father of man. This is a saying in English. That means that what the child learns in its early age will maintain it throughout life. Maintain the child throughout life, the person throughout life. What they learn in the beginning period, like from 5 to 12, will maintain them throughout their whole life, if they're taught properly. Of course, if they're watching television and playing video games and hearing and talking nonsense all the time, they won't learn anything. And then they'll grow up being a nonsense. But if they're taught the simple austerities of life of brahmachari under the tutelage of a bona fide guru, they're taught everything necessary to sustain them throughout all life. And even if they get married, they do not become victimized by ignorance, thinking I am this body and sense gratification is the goal of life. In fact, this is explained very deeply. It's called Daivi Sampat. When Krishna tells Arjuna, you were born with transcendental qualities right from the start. That's called Daivi Sampat, the 16th chapter, 5th verse. It says, Daivi Sampat Vimokshaya Nirbandaya Suri Mata Mahasucha Sampadam Daivim Abhijato Sipandava. So he says, the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. So this is called Daivi Sampat, as opposed to Asuri Sampat. Asuri means demons, and Sampat means assets. So there's a big difference between the Daivi Sampat, the assets of a real devotee, and Asuri Sampat, the assets of a demon. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna encourages Arjuna by telling him that he was not born with demoniac qualities. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac, because he was considering the pros and cons. Now that's a major statement right there. A demon doesn't think about the effects of his actions. He just acts and doesn't care what the effects are. However, a devotee like Arjuna, he carefully thinks, if I do this, what will happen? How will it affect other people? And therefore he considers the pros and cons of an action before acting. And that means he's a devotee. He has divine qualities because he's responsible. He doesn't want to perform any action that might bring misery to others. This is called para upakar. This is the culture of Krishna consciousness. Doing good to others, para upakar. Being a benefit to others, not exploiting others. That is the life of the devotee. That is the Daivi Sampat, the transcendental qualities of a devotee. He was considering whether respectable persons such as Bhisma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. This is extremely important. This is even in Islam. There's a nice story, I've told this before. Hazrat Ali was fighting in a battlefield against so-called enemies of Islam. And he knocked one guy down, and he was going to kill him with his sword. And the person spit in his face. And he stopped and thought about it and didn't do anything. So the person was on the ground, and he knew he was going to die. He said, "Well, why don't you kill me?" He said, "I was going to kill you," he said, for in my desire to glorify Allah and defeat the enemy. But when you spit in my face, I became angry. And I cannot kill you in a state of anger like this. Well, obviously, if you're fighting, you're angry, right? But he was saying that as long as his desire was to serve Allah, he was not hesitating at all. But as soon as he became mentally and physically angry because of feeling insulted by this person, he refused to kill the person. And there are folkloric stories like this also. Now, this is not a folklore, it actually happened. But that's why here it's saying, so he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. So one time there was the devil, and he was harassing some people. And this one person who was like a very strong Christian, he said, "I'm going to kill that devil." Why is he always harassing my Christian friends? So he got a weapon, and he went toward the devil, and he said, "You devil, by the power of God, I will kill you." And the devil was afraid, and he fell at his feet. He said, "Please, please don't do such a thing. I'm sorry, I will stop harassing people." And the man was surprised, this was the devil, he has all powers. So he didn't kill the devil. But then, and then the devil also gave him some reward for not killing him, like some money or something. And then, after that, the devil started harassing people again. So the guy, the Christian, he got his weapon and went after the devil again. And he said, "By the power of God, I'm going to kill you," But when he tried to strike the devil just knocked the sword out of his hand like it was nothing, And then the man was shocked, and he said, "My God," he said, "before when I came, I was going to kill you, and you surrendered to me, but today you knocked the sword out of my hand and like it was a toy." And the devil said, "Yes." He said, "You know why?" He said, "No." He said, "Because the first time you came, you were sincerely serving God. But the second time you came, you were acting out of false ego, thinking that you are such a powerful person. And that's why I easily defeated you." So here when Prabhupada says, he was considering whether respectable persons such as Bhisma or Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. This is an extremely important point. We should always look at what is our motive. Are we acting because of anger, false prestige, or harshness, or are we acting due to genuine concern about serving Krishna? See? And therefore following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he was not of the quality of the demons. For a Kshatriya, a military man, shooting arrows at the enemy is considered transcendental, and refraining from such a duty is demoniac. Therefore, there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. So, what is the difference, the major difference between a demon and a devotee? Devotees are regulated and demons are not. So now we can tell who's a demon and who's a devotee. The ones that cannot regulate themselves to follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, as an initiated devotee promises to do at initiation, that means they have asuric sampat. They have asuric or demoniac assets, not Devi sampat, spiritual assets, because they can't get themselves, they can't bring themselves to be regulated in devotional service. Okay, so therefore, what happens to such people? They become entangled. They become entangled in all kinds of self-interested activities, activities for making a profit. The profit incentive more or less destroys the desire to be a good devotee. People become crazy for making more and more money, and they ignore their duties of trying to go back to Godhead, trying to be with God all the time, or be with Krishna all the time. So therefore it says, Nate vidu swatakatim hi vishnum durasaya ye bahira artamanina anda yatanda upayini yamana tepis tantriyam urudam nibadha. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home, back to Godhead, and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. A blind man, as blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor. What's fruitive labor? What's the word fruitive mean? We've explained this before. This is a word that Prabhupada coined. It's not in an English dictionary, fruitive. Fruit is in the English dictionary, but not fruitive. He purposely made this word up because he couldn't find a proper word in English for what he was trying to express or translate. So fruitive means it has a negative connotation. Fruit is a positive thing. Fruitive is a negative thing. Why? Because it implies that one is acting selfishly for sense gratification. That's the whole implication of the word fruitive. So, as blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So here's a wonderful verse that explains the dilemma of everybody in this world. As we explained in a couple of classes recently, that people become, through material education and associating with materialistic people, they just naturally think that the goal of life is sense gratification, and to have sense gratification you need money, and to get money you have to work really hard and get educated by the demons how to make money, and sometimes they don't even care if they do things legally or illegally. They're so attached to making money one way or the other in order to have sustained sense gratification that they'll even do illegal things. And that whole ethos, that whole let's say the word in German is Zeitgeist, in other words, the general tendency of everyone in a certain period of time is make money, or in other words, work hard and play hard, as they say in colloquial English. Make money and enjoy sense gratification as much as you can, because when you die, it's all over. There's nothing after death. There's no God. There's no judgment. Therefore, everything should be based on the body and sense gratification in life. Well, this is explained more in depth in the 16th chapter, in the verse 8. It says, Asatyam apratistham te jagad ahur anishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kamahaitukam. They, meaning the asuras, say that this world is unreal, with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. And Prabhupada's purport is amazing. He says, the demonic conclude that the world is phantasmagoria. It's an illusion, right? A fabulously constructed illusion. There's no cause and effect. There's no God. There's no supreme intelligent person or supreme personality God. It's all fairy tales. There's no God, no controller, no purpose. Everything is unreal. They say that this cosmic manifestation arises due to chance, material actions and reactions. They do not think that the world was created by God for a certain purpose. They have their own theory that the world has come about in its own way and that there is no reason to believe that there is a God behind it. For them, there is no difference between spirit and matter, and they do not accept the supreme spirit. Everything is matter only, and the whole cosmos is supposed to be a mass of ignorance. According to them, everything is void, and whatever manifestation exists is due to our ignorance in perception. They take it for granted that all manifestations of diversity is a display of ignorance. Just as in a dream, we may create many things which actually have no existence. Then when we are awake, we see that everything is simply a dream. But factually, although the demons say that life is a dream, they are very expert in enjoying this dream. And so, instead of acquiring knowledge, they become more and more implicated in their dreamland. They conclude that as a child is simply the result of sexual intercourse between man and woman, this world is born without any soul. For them, it is only a combination of matter that has produced the living entities, and there's no question of the existence of the soul, as many living creatures come out from perspiration and from a dead body without any cause. The whole living world has come out of the material combinations of the cosmic manifestation. Therefore, material nature is the cause of this manifestation, and there's no other cause. They do not believe in the words of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, Maya dakshena pakriti suyate sat characharam. Under my direction, the whole material world is moving. In other words, among the demons, there is no perfect knowledge of the creation of the world. Every one of them has some particular theory of his own. According to them, one interpretation of the scriptures is as good as another, for they do not believe in a standard understanding of the scriptural injunctions. Wow, how did Prabhupada get it all right like that? Because he spent his whole life hearing and studying the words of his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the Acharyas. He didn't waste his time watching television or hearing this nonsense or that nonsense theory and being overwhelmed by material knowledge. Of course, he went to college, but he never took his degree because he was a follower of Gandhi and he was protesting. But later on, he realized even college was a waste of time. So you don't really need to go to college to get an education. In fact, in college, they don't give you an education. They give you what's called asuri sampat, demoniac assets. And and a life of slavehood. You become a slave of corporations, and you make money for the corporations. Of course, they give you some money also, but you're always in distress. You're always in anxiety. You never know when you can get fired. There's disloyal competition within the corporation. That's the corporate culture. So, and if you start your own business, it's always rivalry. There's always competition. It's survival of the fittest. It's the law of the jungle, right? So the whole thing is a cause of anxiety, right? And the little bit of happiness they have convinces them that they should put up with all the nonsense that they're dealing with, right? So persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader a guru, a similar blind man attached to external sense objects, cannot understand the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead. So they don't waste 1 minute on Atma Tattva. Not 1 minute. They said, that's a waste of time. It's not going to do me any good. Let me just look at the stocks today. Let me just give the deliverables. Let me plot how to ruin the competition. Let me do this. Let me do that. And let me dream about the sense gratification I'm going to have. That's their life, their whole life, right up to the moment of death. And they take refuge in fallible soldiers. Who are the fallible soldiers? Family members, the immediate family, extended family, ethnicity, the nation, the whole universe. They're all always concerned with material things. Since there must always be a difference of opinion between demons and devotees, Hiranyakashipu, when criticized by his son Prahlad Maharaj, should not have been surprised that Prahlad Maharaj differed from his way of life. Yeah, we should not be surprised that by hearing what we're hearing from Prabhupada in these purports in the second canto, that we're going to end up having what you would call a overview of life that's completely different than everybody else. Completely different than everybody else. And we shouldn't be surprised, because basically everybody else is not working in order to go back to Godhead. They're working to stay in the material world permanently. So you cannot have the same points of view. You cannot have the same priorities. No, it's not possible, because if you want to stay in the material world, you don't want to waste 1 second on Atma Tattva or Srimad Bhagavatam or anything like that. For you, it's a waste of time. And I've seen that myself. I've seen on many levels, when I was with my family, my brothers were always thinking about how to make more money, either betting on horse races. They would spend hours trying to figure out which horse is going to win the race. So they study, what the horse is eating, how it's passing stool, who's the jockey, all the nonsense. And they become so-called experts in trying to figure out which horse is going to win by trying to get as much information they can about the feed of the horse, the stool of the horse, and so forth. Right? And then other people are doing the same thing for stocks, and then other people are doing the same thing, trying to study, doing a market study to come out with a new product. They're spending hours, days, months, years, a lifetime studying mundane subjects in order to make more money. And basically, they don't want to waste 1 minute on Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. They don't want to even think about death. Every once in a while, they'll look at the newspaper and there's a headline: "Scientists discover a new technique for healing cancer." And they say, "Oh, okay, the guys are working for me. Good, when I get cancer, I'll get that new drug and I'll be okay." So all hope against hope. what does that mean, hope against hope? They have one hope, it fails. They come up with a new hope. And then that one fails, and then they come up with a new hope. And that one fails, and then they come up with a new hope. So it's hope against hope. It's a lose-lose process. But yet, they always think there's light at the end of the tunnel. But there's no end to the tunnel. That's the problem. So therefore, Prabhupada says, Prahlāda Maharaj declined to accept nonsense gurus or take instruction from his materialistic teachers. An actual guru is Kshatriya, one who has heard or received perfect knowledge through parampara, the disciplic succession. Therefore, Prahlāda Maharaj did not recognize seminal spiritual master. Such spiritual masters are not at all interested in Vishnu. Indeed, they are hopeful of material success. Bahi artha manina. The word bahi means external, artha means interest, and manina means taking very seriously. So, should we teach this to our kids? That you have a teacher, you should analyze whether they're following regulative principles or not. You should analyze whether they're interested in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, or whether they're not interested at all in that, and just interested in mundane things. You should analyze their lifestyle. Are they eating meat? Are they engaged in illicit sex? All these things should be taken into account before one accepts somebody as a teacher. Right? But nowadays, no one does that. They just give their kids to these demons, and they just hope the kid gets A's and goes to Stanford, gets a PhD, and makes a lot of money. They don't care that the teachers all through those years may be demons. So, the knowledge of the materialist is restricted within the 4 billion mile limit of this material world, which is in the dark portion of the creation. They do not know that beyond the material world is the spiritual world. Unless one is a devotee of the Lord, one cannot understand the existence of the spiritual world. Gurus, teachers who are simply interested in this material world are described in this verse as andha, blind. Such blind men may lead many other blind followers without true knowledge of material conditions. But they are not accepted by devotees like Prahlāda Maharaj. Prahlāda Maharaj is only 5 years old. And look at all the discrimination he has. He's refusing to accept his two demon teachers. And every time they leave the classroom for some reason or other, he starts preaching to the others. Don't listen to anything they say. They're all nonsense. You should make your life, not waste 1 second of your life on this materialistic nonsense. We should chant Hare Krishna. We should hear Atma Tattva, the truth about the soul and its eternal relationship with Krishna. Don't waste your time with these foolish and demon teachers. Let's see. Would you want your kid to be like Prahlāda Maharaj or like the others, just following the demons? These are questions you have to ask as a parent. Do you want your kid to be like Prahlāda, or you want your kid to be like the myriad number of kids who get poisoned going every day to these schools where they're hearing nonsense all day long? You know. So therefore, it says, such blind men may lead many other blind followers without true knowledge of material conditions. But they are not accepted by devotees like Prahlāda Maharaj. Such blind teachers, being interested in the external material world, are always bound by the strong ropes of material nature. So, there's a difference, we began to speak about this yesterday, between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is simply the accumulation of facts. That's all it is. Wisdom is knowing how to use all those facts correctly in Krishna consciousness. That's real wisdom. The phony wisdom is, oh, well, you use all that knowledge to make money and have sense gratification. But that's not real wisdom. real wisdom, and knowing how to use all those facts in the service of Krishna. So both knowledge and wisdom have a materialistic interpretation as opposed to the spiritual interpretation. And unless we understand the spiritual interpretation of knowledge and wisdom, we'll be misled throughout our life. So many kids think, I got a great education. I got a PhD in volcanoes. The only problem is I can't find a job. So I'll end up driving a taxi or selling marijuana or something to make money. Right? Or just like I know this one man, a Gujarati gentleman, really nice person. He's a doctor. But he quit being a doctor to open up a FedEx store. So why did he go to school all those years to become a doctor, and he ends up in a FedEx store, right? Being a businessman. So you don't have to go to school and get a doctor's degree to open up a FedEx store, right? At the most, you have to know a little bit about bookkeeping and accounting, and have a sense of how to make a profit, right? You could get that by being an apprentice of a businessman for a year and for free, and then you could open up your own store. I know another friend of mine, he owns a State Farm insurance company. And many of the people that work for him, they learn how to become a State Farm insurance, let's say, agent, and then they open up their own State Farm insurance business. So they didn't specifically go to school to do that. They learned it on the job. They got a job working for someone who has a State Farm insurance company, and then they learned all the ins and outs of it, and then they open up their own State Farm agency, right? So you see, the whole myth of education is misleading. Most of the things you learn in these schools, you don't really use the rest of your life. Like, Prabhu, did you ever have a biology class? And do you use any of that knowledge? No. Prabhu, did you have a differential calculus class? Yes. Do you use any of it? No. No. Yeah, you could have just gone. You could have just gone to school to learn computer programming, right? You didn't have to learn all this other. Did you ever study history? Do you ever use any of that stuff you learned? Do you ever remember any of it? No. You see, most of the education is useless. You're not really going to use it. The real education is learning your language. English, let's say, right? Let's say if you let's say you studied Mongolian. Would you ever use that in the United States? Never. I studied Armenian. I never use it in the United States, right? Just when I meet another Armenian guy, that's all. And there are a few of those, right? So, most of that education is unnecessary. But we think, this is education. Education is this. First of all, learn the difference between knowledge, the materialistic definition of knowledge and wisdom, and the spiritual definition of knowledge and wisdom. That's knowledge. You learn what the wrong interpretation is, and you learn what the right interpretation of knowledge and wisdom, because everyone should have knowledge and wisdom in life. But if you have the wrong version of it, you're being totally misled. See? And that's what they're teaching in school. Knowledge and wisdom. I remember when I was a kid, knowledge and wisdom was you learn how to make money, how to make a profit. And then the wisdom is you outsmart everybody else in the marketplace by coming up with novel ideas of how to sell the product and make the product and sell it. So that was the knowledge and wisdom that I learned when I was a kid, right? And I was trained by my brothers and family members to think like that. And then I went to school, and none of my brothers ever went to college. And I go to college, and I learned, philosophy and mathematics and all that stuff. And it just confused me, because what I was actually taught was how to make money, right? I wasn't, but I thought, well, I'll go get an education and I can make more money. But it didn't really help me at all. I just basically wasted my time, 4 years and a lot of money going to college. So, but that is not real knowledge, and that's not real wisdom. Real knowledge is knowing Atma Tattva, the existence of your soul as being different from the body, your relationship of your individual soul with Paramatma, and ultimately that Krishna is the source of Paramatma, of all the jivas, of the material nature, and everything. And that's called Atma Tattva, the whole panoply, or the whole spectrum of Atma Tattva. That's what we should learn. And wisdom is using that knowledge in the service of Krishna. See? Okay, so wisdom is the synthesis of knowledge and experiences into insights that deepen one's understanding of relationships and the meaning of life. Well, see, all these definitions, they never mention God. Remember, yesterday was talked about Stoicism. There was not even one time did they mention God, let alone Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You see, so these are all the materialistic way of explaining things. It's basically summarized by Prabhupada: everything minus Krishna. See? So everything minus Krishna is half the chicken. It's not the whole chicken. Therefore, you'll never get an egg. You never go back to Godhead. Okay, so I just want to cover one other thing. What we're hearing in this purport today and the previous two purports is explained in Bhagavad Gita also, in the 4th chapter, where it says, starting with 4th chapter, verse 19 to 23. 19 to 23. It explains basically abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent. He, meaning the devotee, performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. So now I use the word fruitive again, meaning actions by which you make a profit, and when the purpose is to use that profit for sense gratification. So it's right there in the Bhagavad Gita, exactly what he's explaining in more depth in Canto 2, Chapter 2, verses 3, 4, and 5, 6, and so forth. And then such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. And then, he who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. And then, the work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. So, this is the process of liberating oneself from the cycle of birth and death. And it's all explained in Bhagavad Gita, and now Prabhupada is explaining much more in depth in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is how we should understand Bhagavad Gita's relationship to the Bhagavatam. That whatever themes are in the Bhagavad Gita, and they're all there, they're just expanded tremendously in the Bhagavatam, right? So last point I want to make, our homework project, which I don't know if anyone's actually working on it or not, but we should. So what are those qualities that Krishna has that people don't have? Because if you don't understand how Krishna is uniquely different than normal people, then you don't really have a transcendental understanding of God. So, first of all, Krishna can expand himself infinitely. The best yogis can expand themselves 10 times only. And each expansion does exactly the same thing as the other expansions. Whereas Krishna can expand himself infinitely. Infinitely means there's no limit to his expansions, and each expansion can be doing something differently. And the expansions can exist contemporaneously, to exist at the same time. Just like you have Parasuram, who meets Lord Rama. They're both expansions of Krishna, you see. So you can have 3, 4, or infinite number of Krishna's expansions present at the same time, engaging in the same place. So that's one thing that no one can emulate. So we have to learn what these qualities are of Krishna that no one can emulate or do. Because there are major differences between the jiva and Krishna. So there's such a thing called Asta Shakti. He has, besides the cities, he have the Asta Shaktis. And let me explain what they are. They are these are mystic powers that no one else has. So, where are they? Yeah. Asta Shaktis. Let me just find it. So he has the yoga siddhis. Those are Anima, Mahima, Garima, Lagima, Prapti, Prakamya, Isitva, Vasitva, Kamavasayita. So that means mystic yogis can develop these type of powers to a certain degree. Krishna has them completely. That is, he can reduce his size to an atom or less. He can expand his body infinitely. He can infinitely become heavy. He can become weightless. He has the ability to be anywhere at will. He can realize or possess anything he desires. He has supremacy over nature. He can control all natural forces and produce them. And he can create an entire universe. So Krishna doesn't, so yogis can do this in a limited sense. Krishna does these things in an unlimited sense. Okay. Then again, the Asta Shaktis. Where did I write them down? Okay. All right, we'll go over that tomorrow. Are there any questions? No questions? Did you do any of the homework? Huh? No. The homework is write down, you have the Asta Gunas, I'm sorry, I'm not Asta Shakti. It says Sad Aishvarya, Asta Siddhis, and Asta Gunas. Okay, the Asta Gunas are 5 things. Yeah, so Krishna never dies. He never becomes old. He's never hungry. He never laments. And he's never thirsty. And whatever his desires he has are lawful. And whatever he decides cannot be changed by anyone. These are the 8 qualities of Krishna, or Astagunas. Okay. So these things have to be understood so we understand the unique position of Krishna that no one can equal. Right? If we don't understand, that's why people are accepting idiots like a Sadguru and this Ananda and that Ananda as God. But they don't even come close to Krishna's powers or qualities. So unless people understand what are the qualities of God, they will be easily duped by these fakes and think that they are God. Right? Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai.